What's up, guys, and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Robbie Cassidy, and today we're going to discuss when you should start your rehab. Now, this podcast is actually a bit of a special one for myself as I hit number 50, so coming up on a year in just a couple of weeks, and I'm delighted to say that it's been going well so far. I really enjoy it. I enjoy bringing on the guests, and I hope that you do too. So I hope it's bringing you value, and I hope that you're taking things from it that you can implement in your own life, because that's kind of what I wanted when I started. So, guys, to jump straight into this podcast, or I suppose before I jump into it, I want to talk a small bit about what I do, and if anyone is interested in, they can definitely get in contact. So at the moment, I work with active people, I suppose is probably the best way to describe it, with long-standing injuries. Now, that's on a 1-to-1, and I do that on a 12 and 24 week basis. And basically what we do is it's a very big educational component to the rehab, in that people can jump on board, we set goals, we decide what we want to get back to. A lot of the people that are working with me now have wrote themselves off from getting back to sport, or they've been out for so long they just don't know how to get back to it, or what they should be looking at, or what they should be focusing on. Or other ones are people that just keep getting recurring injuries, and the same thing keeps flaring up, like a back keeps kicking up, or their hip, or their shoulder, or knee, and they just don't know what to do, and they feel that they've tried out everything else. So if you feel like that's something that or if you have an injury and it's something that you want to get over, and you finally want to take control of it again, definitely send me a message. We can set up a free call, we can discuss it in a bit more detail, and if it's the right thing for you, then we can go forward and make a plan. Other than that, I also do online remote consultations, where it's you either have an injury and you get in contact, like a recent injury, or it could be a long-standing one, and we do that. We set it up on camera, go through all your moving patterns, have a look at everything, and discuss your lifestyle as well. I'll have you fill out a sheet before we get on, so we have a better idea of what's going on, and that will hopefully then what we look to do is implement different exercises, lifestyle changes to get you back to doing what you want to do. So that's the basic package, guys, of what I am doing, the two basic things at the moment. And if you are interested in either of those, just send me a message either on Instagram, on LinkedIn at Robbie Cassidy, or you can get in contact with me at mobilitytutor@gmail.com. Just send me a quick email and we can get straight down to it and discuss, set up a call and see if it's the right thing for you. Now, to jump right into the podcast, as I said today, what I want to discuss is when should you start your rehab? And this is a fitting one, I suppose, at this time of the year, in that a lot of people are going back to championship. If you're running, a lot of people are getting into races now come September and October, November. And obviously they've been going through them over the summer as well. But this is kind of the end of the year when people pick up small injuries, niggling injuries, because they've had such a high load during the year, and it catches up to them basically because their recovery side of things might not be as good, or could just be unlucky. Okay, so what I want to talk about here is when should you actually start rehab when you get an injury. Now, when I say that, it's obviously very general, so I'm going to talk in general principles of when you should start rehab and what you should do for them, and I hope then it'll give you a better idea or a better understanding and more confidence to tackle these issues with somebody. So you can either, if you were talking with your physio, if you're talking with myself, and you can discuss it out, what's the best plan, and also just to give you a better idea of how the body heals itself. So what do I mean by rehab? Well, rehab really is to rehabilitate or restore something to its previous or its best condition. Now, there should be very little difference when it comes to sports between your rehab and performance, in that your rehab should lead into your performance training as well. If it doesn't, you're missing out on a huge chunk of your rehab phase. And this is what happens to a lot of people, is they don't bridge that gap between what they do in the gym and what they do on the pitch. And if you're not bridging that gap, you'll find that you'll get in a bit of bother, in that your body hasn't adapted like on a neurological level, on a physical level, on an emotional level, to actually getting back on the field or getting back to the sport or activity that you enjoy doing. So that's why they mix in. That's why I say rehab and performance should be the same thing. So it should transfer over to performance. So really, what is rehab? It's anything that helps you return to the best state that you were in, whether it be pre-injury levels, or it could be the fact that you have injured it before years ago and you just never got back to that state, that top performance state, or let's say you never got back to your best after you injured yourself. So that's what I like to do to rehab, is you need to set goals. You need to decide what you want to get to. And if you do that, then you can really, really pursue that and push on and push yourself a small bit further, so you know what you're trying to get at. Now, what are the main problems that you would see with injury rehabilitation? Well, I think one of the main issues that I see, especially with people that jump on board with me, is that they start their actual rehab way too late. Okay, and what I mean is that I see a lot of people who get like a minor ankle injury and they sit for 2 days icing it, waiting for swelling to come down before they start working on it. Well, if you do that first, you've delayed it 2 days, but you'll find then that your return to sport will actually be delayed by, it could be 4, 5, 6 days, it could be a week, 2 weeks. And that's because of the fact that the body isn't getting moving. It isn't starting that healing phase as early as it could be. Because your body will heal to the state or the environment that it's put in or put under. So if the state that you're letting it heal to is just you resting, well then that's not very similar. That's very different to what you would actually be doing if you were, let's say, out on the pitch running around. They're completely different. And if you don't actually start your rehab early, if you don't get up and you don't get weight bearing and moving around in that, you'll find that it will take you a good bit longer to actually get back to play when you do get back to play. And there is a lot of research behind this, whether people start their hamstring rehab 3 days after, if they do it 9 days after, and how long it takes them to get back to sport and that. And they have found that if you do delay your rehab, it will delay your return to sport and your return to activity. So you really need to get it started as early as possible. Now, what do I mean by that? I don't mean if you have a muscle injury or if you have a joint injury that you just return back to what you were doing, because obviously that's going to injure yourself. You're going to injure yourself, you're going to make it worse. But you can start doing the smallest things first. And I have videos if anyone is interested on Instagram. I sprained my ankle a couple of weeks ago, and within about 5 hours, I actually had started my rehab again. And it was only a small sprain, it was only a grade 1, but I sprained it on the Thursday, and I was back training, full training on the Monday, and I actually had a fight on the weekend after. So within 1 week, I had returned to full functionality of it. Now, obviously, that completely depends on the grade and all that, but I was really, really focused on the rehab because I knew these things were coming up, and I really wanted to see if I pushed myself, what I could do and what I could get back to. So I have documented it all on Instagram, and you can check that out if you want to. But really what I was doing there is I got it weight bearing as early as possible. So I was trying to get weight through it, and I was thinking functionality is what I was thinking. I was thinking, how functional can I make this ankle in as short a time as possible? Okay, so I wasn't too concerned with pain, and I wasn't too concerned with swelling. And there was actually swelling in it up to a week after. There was a bit of swelling around the area. But functionally, I was able to do everything I needed to do. I was able to skip, I was able to do jiu-jitsu, I was able to box, I was able to do Muay Thai, I was able to throw kicks, whatever. So the most important thing, which is the functional component of it, was actually all right. Okay, but there was still that bit of swelling. So if you're just waiting for swelling to come down before you start, you're going to find that you're going to delay that. Okay, because swelling is a natural response. It's going to be a natural response to promote healing around the area, and you don't want to just get rid of swelling all straight away. Okay, so what I'm saying is that it is important to look at what you can do, the simplest things first. As I said, for my ankle, it was just to get weight bearing on it and just to start practicing little hops within my pain threshold. So I knew if I was doing too much, and you can even see in the videos when I talk about it, there's one exercise that I do and I say, all right, that was too much. I'm actually going to pull back and not do that anymore. Okay, because I had an understanding, okay, that was probably a bit too far on what I should be doing, and I don't want to injure it more, or I don't want to aggravate it more. After that, then, I think, and I suppose it comes before or after that, but it's just in line with it, is overprotection of the injured area. Okay, so there's the idea there, you see a lot of people, is that what happens to them is that when they injure it, they just completely protect the area. Is that they lock it up, they either put in a cast or they might wrap it up, but they stop moving it completely. And if you stop moving it, and if you really, really protect it and you kind of catastrophize what's going on, well then the body will follow, and you're going to get more swelling, you're going to have more pain, and you're going to have more tightness, because your conscious thought is going to have a huge effect on how the body reacts to it. So very, very important to not catastrophize it when you get an injury, whether it be an ankle, a knee, a hip, a shoulder, a back, whatever it is. Don't catastrophize it completely. Now, as I said, these are general rules, okay? So if it's like a very serious injury that you need to go to the hospital and get surgery, I'm not saying that you need to go back and start doing all simple things again. You will look at doing that, but obviously get yourself taken care of first. So you don't want to overprotect the area, and you don't want to just make it so that your body will feel that it's very fragile so that it protects it, okay? Now, as I said, if you do that, it will respond, so you will get more inflammation, your pain will increase, your tightness and stiffness will stay around, and your CNS, so your central nervous system's awareness, will be through the roof on this area, okay? And then what can happen there, then after that, is that you will have a high sensitivity around the area. And you would have heard me talking about this in a lot of other podcasts, that the sensitivity gets turned up very, very high, and anytime you get stressed out, you sleep poorly, or you overload it, or you do any of that, then it starts to kick up once again. Okay, so your emotional response will have an effect on how the injury is recorded. So manage your emotions as best as possible when you injure an area, okay? Slow your breathing down, take note of what it's really like. Try not to, it's difficult in different situations, but try not to think it's the worst thing that could possibly be. And just give yourself a chance to pull yourself together in your body to actually figure out what the real issue is. Then you're looking at optimal loading and making sure that you're getting way through it when possible, and all this different stuff to promote the healing response and to promote healing, so you can get back to doing activities that you enjoy doing. Okay, so after that one, okay, and actually before I move on from that one, I want to talk about the emotional response bit. And I've talked about this in previous podcasts with Dr. Ryan Foley from Integrative Neurology, and Integrative, I should say, and David Gray. We talk about it, about how the emotional response is so important when it comes to an injury, in that if it's a traumatic injury, that's going to be recorded very seriously in your nervous system. It's going to remember that, every detail of that, and every detail of how you reacted to it. And because of that, then it'll bring up these fears. You'll get anxious when you think about it. You'll get anxious if you go into certain positions, like if you were in a car crash, let's say, and someone else was driving, you're going to be anxious, because I know this because this has happened to me. You'll be, if I sit in the front seat of a car and there's someone else driving, it makes me very, very anxious. Because I was in a car accident when I was younger, because someone else was driving, yada, yada, yada. But it does, and I can also, at times, it depends if I'm sitting there, if I get very bad, if they're really speeding, I can start to get like aches in my back, feeling it around my lower back. And the reason being is that I've gotten so anxious, I get so tight, and then my body there's alertness goes through the roof. And then because of that, I start to feel that pain. Okay. Now, it's something that I actually need to take care of myself, and it'll obviously take a while to get back. So I'm not saying that these emotional things can be fixed right away. But if you become more aware of them, you'll have a better idea of what to do at the time. You'll have a better idea of how to manage yourself and manage your emotions in the moment. So the last one then, or one of the other ones that I see, issues that I see when people are in rehab and an injury, is delaying their return to activity. Okay? So the brain is always fighting for real estate, okay? Or your nervous system is always fighting for real estate in the brain, I should say. Okay, so it's constantly changing and reorganizing itself and figuring out more efficient ways and more effective patterns, and it's always looking to be as efficient with energy as possible. Now, a really quick example: if someone is an amputee that they get cut off, let's say they lose their arm at the elbow, that area of their brain, their motor cortex, will get taken up, and it will be used for something else instead. Okay, so it'll be taken up by different parts, and the different parts of your body will, different movements will be organized around for different, it might be something else, okay? So basically, if the elbow, or if your arm is missing from the elbow down, instead of just losing that part of your brain that was involved in your hand, and that's a massive part of your brain, because your hand can do so many intricate things, that instead of just losing all that real estate, it reorganizes it builds new neural connections, and it uses that brain space for something else instead, okay? Now, the same thing with an injury. Okay, now it's not going to do it just overnight, obviously. It does take a small bit of time. But because of the fact that it is always changing and it is always looking for that bit of real estate, it is important to get back to activity as early as possible. You don't want to be, or as much as best you can, you don't want to be sitting up for a couple of weeks at a time waiting for something to heal. Because if you do, well then that your body won't be able to coordinate your movements as well. It'll take a small bit more time for your nervous system to start to find those synapses, and it'll delay your return to competitive performance, or delay your return to getting back to your goals. So really important that as early as possible, you need to start working on coordination. You need to start working on plyos. No matter how small they are or how insignificant they seem, it will keep your nervous system on top of that area, and it will improve your return to playtime. Okay, so really simply, the brain is always fighting for real estate because it's changing all the time. So if you're immobilized with an injury and you don't do too much and you wait ages and ages and ages, that real estate, that part of the brain will start to become used. It'll be used for something else instead. Okay, because it needs to save as much as it can, or it needs to use as much as it can. So I suppose getting on to the last part of it is, when should you actually start your rehab? Now, from my perspective, it should be as early as possible, depending on the injury. But in general, principles apply. It should be as early as possible. And what I mean by that principles is, if you were living in a cave, you had no access to medical experience or any medical practitioner, and this was 1,000 years ago, how would you survive? How would the body survive? Because the body is meant to survive. It's a survival machine. It's not something that's just figured us out because now we've medicine in the last 30 years, 40 years, 50 years that we've really effective medicines. I'll give you 200 years, okay? Because of that, it's not that the body has changed all that much. It's that our response to it has changed slightly. And in some situations, we actually put our survival on somebody else. So we take it off our own shoulders and we give it to somebody else, and we say, right, you give me whatever I need to heal. And if that would have happened 1,000 years ago, well, you would have died off. 2,000 years ago, your genes wouldn't be around today. And those genes wouldn't have been passed on to anyone. So that's what I mean. It's a survival machine. If it didn't survive, and what it's trying to do, obviously, when you look at Richard Dawkins and the selfish gene and all that, you're trying to reproduce and you're trying to pass your genes on. This is a very primitive way of putting it, but that's what you are trying to do technically if you look at it from that sense. And to do that, you need to survive so you can reproduce. Now, if you get an injury and then you sit down in a cave there for the next 2.5 weeks and put the feet up, well then very, very, very soon after, you're probably going to die realistically. You're not going to survive that long. You're going to get really weak. Your family isn't going to survive that long. It's going to get really weak. Your genes aren't going to be passed on to anyone else, so you were useless. And those people who did do that back in the day aren't around today, and I can imagine that their genes aren't around today either. So you need to look at rehab in that way, in that the body's always trying to promote functionality to survive, okay, for food and for survival, because we are survival machines. The body's it's a healing and adaptation machine. So if you put it under the right stress and give it recovery time, it will adapt to nearly any stress that you put on it, and it'll get better at managing that stress. So the only way we can do that is if we avoid that overprotection side of things. We really look at what we can do from a functional point of view, and even if it's a small little thing like just standing up out of a chair and sitting back down, well then that's going to promote functional movement in what you're trying to do. It'll promote your sit to stand, it'll promote your coordination of a sit to stand, and even if it's only an ankle sprain, or if it's a knee injury, or if it's a hip injury, it will promote recovery and it will promote functional use of that joint. And that's what we need to look at when we are working on injuries. Now, with muscles, it's the same thing. You just have to be a small bit more cautious in that you're not doing explosive activities, and you're not doing extremely resisted activities that you're going to injure it more. But the same rule applies with getting it moving lightly, body weight first, and using isometrics and that here and there to contracting the muscle to help it heal as fast as possible. So really, the only one that I would look at, that I would say, okay, maybe that you should delay your rehab that bit longer, but I think the principle still applies, and Obviously, if there's any serious conditions, go to a doctor and the physio and get it assessed, definitely. But it's like a compound fracture. And a compound fracture is when you break a bone and it comes through the skin. And there's a lot of vascular issues there as well. So obviously when it's a medical emergency, you need to take that into consideration. But as I said, at the same time, principles apply. If that happened back in the day, they would have to figure out a way, if you wanted to survive, to survive. Okay, so whatever, get sticks and stones and wrap it up and put it together. But that's primitive thinking. Jesus, don't take that advice. But as I was saying, principles apply. If you lived in a cave, you'd no access to medical experience. How would you survive? You'd do as little as you do whatever you could day in, day out to improve it and to get back to work and get back to finding food for your family. So what does that mean? Like it doesn't mean you have to do a lot. You don't actually have to do that much. But if you do bits and pieces consistently, it will have a huge effect on how early you get back to sport and how early you get back to activity. So if it's a joint, I would promote loading the joint early as possible. They've actually, in a lot of places now, instead of casting if you break a bone, instead of casting for 6 to 8 weeks, so if it's in your hand or if it's a smaller bone, a lot of the time they'll splint it for 2 to 4 weeks, probably on the side of caution, and go for 4 weeks at the moment, and then they get it moving as much as possible. The movement is going to heal it. It's going to promote revascularization around the area. It's going to promote healing around the area, and then because of that, then you're going to, and obviously it's going to promote that neurological side of things, regeneration, which will promote functionality and will promote the body getting back to doing what it was doing before. So loading it early, weight bearing as early as possible, testing in the little ways. If it's like something small, moving it around, just seeing what it's like, working within your pain tolerance, not killing yourself, and just getting it moving, just getting the blood flow to the area. That's a great way of starting. So nice and easy, get it moving. Now, think of what you can do to get back to what you want to get back to. So if you want to get back to playing sport, you're going to have to look at doing low-level plyos. You're going to have to look at doing strength work and accessory strength work, and then you're going to have to look at mobility work as well, so you can actually, the joint will move. Outside of that, then you really need to focus on coordination exercises, balance exercises, proprioceptive exercises, vestibular. These are all under the same curtain. They're all under the same what's the word? I guess they're all in the same box, but really getting a good understanding of what you can do to replicate your sport as early as possible will help you in getting back to doing what you want to do. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that you should take on a rehab program by yourself and just work through it and see what happens. Like, you obviously have to work with a professional to really make a proper plan and get you back to doing what you want to do, especially if you want to get back as quick as possible. Then you need to work with a professional. But what I'm saying is, think about these little things, how you can add them in as you're going throughout your day. Because a lot of professionals, they mean well and they're doing their best, but they have you coming in, then they have another person coming in after them, and then they have another person coming in after them from 9 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock in the evening, and they're swamped with people. Okay, so at times they might miss out on these small things to tell you, but really, if you just get injury moving in general, very lightly, low level stuff, see what it's feeling like, small contractions for muscles, small contractions for joints, weight bearing for joints as well is important, nice and easy, and then get back to the activities that you want to do as early as possible. So if sprinting is something that you want to get back to, you need to obviously work up to a walk, to a jog, to a run, to a sprint. You need to progress that, and then your sprint needs to go at different levels of fatigue and at different directions. Okay, but they are the important things. It is a graded response of what you do. You progress it over time, but if you take the time to break up throughout your day, every hour on the hour, and start doing little exercises. Let's say it's your ankle, you're doing little ankle rolls, you're doing calf raises, you're bringing your toes to your shins. If it's your knee, you're doing mini squats, you're standing up straight, you might be standing on one leg at a time. Same with the hip and knee work, very similar in that way. If it's the shoulder, you might be doing like shoulder rolls, you might be doing like low level push-offs against a wall. You could be holding a plank, you could be holding a single arm plank, mini push-ups, anything like that, picking stuff up, dropping it down, carrying stuff, all of that will help it, okay? But it is important to get them working. Shoulder's a bit more complex as well because there's so many things acting on it, and there's so many different, but I won't go into that. I have done a podcast on it in the past, but just getting a better idea of what you can do to help it out. If it's your back, you're looking at, now the back is, if you have an injury that's shooting down into your legs, then you need to look at different things. But in general, you want to get it moving a small bit more, a small bit better, making sure that you're not just hinging on one point in the back and that the whole back is moving together, that your neck is moving, that you're like bending down, touching your toes if able. You're able to, if you're not, you're bending down, touching your knees, you're extending back lightly, you're doing light rotations. All of that will help in getting it moving again. Because the first thing that happens after an injury is the body goes into that protective response. Everything gets tight. Everything gets sore. And that's not going to promote revascularization of the area. That's going to promote just rigid stability of the area without, and really, really protecting it. So that's why when you start thinking about how bad it is, that will also promote that even more so. So now, instead of just, let's say, one spot on your back that's a bit sore or injured, or you might have a little muscle injury, now you have the whole back goes into spasm. Okay, so that's why the belief side of things is really important, and your attitude towards it is important. Just think of the body as a healing and survival machine. Okay, healing and adaptation, I should say, machine, but it is a survival machine. If you do that, you will you will get your confidence back. It will heal, and you can get back to doing what you want to do. Now, it does take a plan, and it does take commitment to a plan, and it does take accountability, and it definitely does take the right knowledge to get into that position. But you can get your confidence back. So I would not write it off at all. And it is important to do that, because if you set limits on yourself early in life, those limits will stick around for quite a long time. So get over those as early as possible. Because that is everything that I wanted to talk about today. I hope that it makes a bit more sense. What I'm saying is that when should you start your rehab? You should start your rehab as early as possible, and just doing the right things. It doesn't have to be a lot, just a small bit here and there. Watch that you're not overprotecting the area. Now, obviously, this is rehab for, I'm talking about physio stuff here. So we're looking at, because we're looking at the muscles, the joints. I guess we're looking at the neurological system as well, respiratory system, cardiovascular system. I suppose it's everything really, but at the same time, always follow your physician's advice. This is not medical advice. First things first, it's not medical advice. I'm just giving you an idea, hopefully providing you a different point of view on how the body works and how the body heals. So always follow what your medical or healthcare professional tells you to do. Don't be telling them, Robbie told me to do this. But hopefully that gives you a better idea anyway. So thank you so much, guys, for listening again this week. If you have any suggestions on podcasts you'd like me to do, or guests you'd like me to get on, I would love to hear it. So send them on to me on Instagram, on LinkedIn, through an email. And one other point actually that I never mentioned at the start is I have started a weekly newsletter now. So I will put a link on my Instagram. That'll probably be the best thing. And basically it's like shortened versions of these podcasts in a way, but I talk about different topics. So one week we talked about incorporating mobility into your rehab. Another week we talked about, similar enough to this, when should you start it, but what type of movements should you be doing. We also talked about addressing confidence and building confidence again after an injury. So if anyone wants to send me a message, I will send them on to you. But join up to that newsletter. It comes out once a week, every Friday. I couldn't be doing it a couple of times a week. I don't know how people do that, but it'd be spamming as well. So check that out. If you want to join it, I'll put a link there. You can also download the hamstring protocol. That's in my it's in my bio on Instagram, and that will also add you to the newsletter. But yeah, that's everything, guys. I'm going to finish up on saying that if anyone has any long-term injuries and you are looking to get help with them, or you looking to get a better idea of what you could do for it, send me a message or send me an email at mobilitytutor@gmail.com, and we can set up a free call and make a bit of a plan. But yeah, guys, that's everything for me. I hope everyone's doing well out there at the moment. I set up here now. As I was saying, ankle injury is cleared up. I'm back training fully again. I competed in my first jiu-jitsu competition last week. Got bet. But that's the gist of what I've been doing out here. Anyone has any questions, any issues, anything at all, guys, please get in contact. And lastly, I suppose, is if you enjoyed this podcast, I'd love if you could send it to a friend or share it on your story on Instagram, because it's the best way to promote it. And I really, really enjoy doing them, and I want to continue doing them. And I suppose the best way to do that is if it is getting some bit of visibility, and if it's getting some bit of attention, it goes a long way in letting me know what ones you want to what ones you want me to do or what guests you want to get on. And it's a lot easier to get guests on, or bigger guests, when I can show that there's a strong following as well. So yeah, that's everything from me. Hope everyone is well out there, and I will chat to you all again soon. Subscribe on iTunes. Better to finish on that. Have a good one.